Hi everyone! This week's Lesson 21 story is called The Garden, and it is from Frog and Toad Together by Aloud-The. Alright, he is the author over here. You can always read that if you want. The target skill that we're going to talk about is story structure. Also, the essential question we're going to focus on this week is, what grows in a garden? Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. "Now, seeds," said Toad, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now, seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now, seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "Those poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. "What words are repeated on these pages? Why? Go ahead and talk about that with a family member. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them, and let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow." That night Toad looked out his window. "Drat!" said Toad. "My seeds have not started to grow." They must be afraid of the dark. Toad went out to his garden with some candles. "I will read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they will not be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. What is Toad's problem? How is he trying to solve it? Go ahead and talk about that with a family member. All the next day Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "There must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired and he fell asleep. "Toad, Toad, wake up!" said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "At last!" shouted Toad. "My seeds have stopped being afraid to grow." "And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad. "But you were right, Frog. It was very hard work." Okay, so think about the story structure. Frog and Toad are the main characters in the garden. What kind of place is the setting of the story? Does the story happen during the day, at night, or both? Think about the problem Toad has had and how it is solved. Use a story map to write text evidence about the character, setting, and important events. Okay, so we know that the characters are Frog and Toad. The setting, where did the story take place? You can just have a discussion with a family member about these things. And then the plot. What happens in the story? What was the problem? How did Toad solve the problem? Okay, go ahead and talk about this with family member. Okay, enjoy.